Have you ever noticed how the emptiest people manage to capture everyone's attention? While you, with your deep reflections and genuine knowledge, remain invisible in the corner of the room, watching the spectacle of triumphant ignorance. It's a silent and familiar pain. You know you have something genuine to offer, but the world seems fascinated by the noise of those who talk much and say little. This isn't a modern perception. It's a phenomenon that Socrates had already identified over 2,000 years ago. Why do fools seem to have all the answers? Why do they dominate conversations, attract followers, and occupy prominent positions? In this video, we'll explore why genuine intelligence often remains in the shadows while stupidity shines under the spotlight, and how Socrates, the man who dedicated his life to exposing this farce, can teach us not only to understand this phenomenon, but to navigate through it without losing our soul. In the heart of ancient Greece, over 2,000 years ago, Athens was the apple of the world's eye, a vibrant democracy, a stage for theatre, philosophy, and an insatiable thirst for political power. But despite being the cradle of thought, Greece was also dominated by the ignorant. In this bubbling environment arose the sophists, traveling teachers who taught the art of persuasion without caring about truth. They were experts in ready-made speeches, confident on stage, and sold knowledge like those offering spectacles. For them, what mattered was convincing, gaining prestige, and winning votes. In the midst of this festival of empty certainties, Socrates appeared. He was seen as a weirdo, a provocateur. Instead of seeking applause, he cast doubts. Instead of offering easy answers, he questioned assumptions with direct questions. Do you really know what you claim to know? There's a revealing scene in Plato's dialogues. Meno, a young aristocrat, arrives strutting in his new toga. "Socrates," he proclaims, "how lucky to find you. Yesterday I taught about virtue to 50 young Athenians." "Wonderful, Meno. And what is virtue?" "Oh, everyone knows. Virtue is acting with honor and courage." "I understand. So a thief who steals courageously is virtuous?" "No, of course not. Virtue it's doing good." "And what is good?" "Good is, well, it's that which benefits the city. So if I destroy the houses of the poor to build a magnificent temple, am I being virtuous?" Meno's face goes from red to pale. His hands tremble. Suddenly, he remembers an extremely urgent appointment on the other side of the city. He flees almost running, leaving Socrates alone. Again. It was always like this. Socrates had a peculiar talent for making people realize they didn't know what they were absolutely certain they knew. And the greater the initial certainty, the more violent the reaction upon discovering their own ignorance. What Socrates began to perceive long before modern psychology now has a name: the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a cruel irony. The less a person knows, the more confidence they demonstrate. Not out of deliberate arrogance, but because they simply don't know enough to recognize their own ignorance. Meanwhile, the most competent tend to doubt themselves, precisely because they understand the complexity of what's at stake. Socrates, "I know that I know nothing," was the maximum expression of this paradox. He had studied so much, questioned so much, investigated so much, that he could see the infinite ocean of the unknown. Meanwhile, the sophists splashed in shallow puddles convinced they dominated all the seas. It's exactly what happens today when someone spends 2 weeks studying investments on YouTube and already considers themselves a financial market guru. Or when they read 3 articles about vaccines and debate with the same conviction as someone who spent decades in laboratories. Ignorance doesn't know its own limits. That's why it's so confident. But understanding the Dunning-Kruger effect explains only half the problem. Why the ignorant think they're smarter and speak with such confidence. What we still need to understand is why society rewards this ignorance. Why, after all, do people listen to those who know little but talk much? The answer lies in human biology. Our brain didn't evolve to seek truth. It evolved to survive in groups. And within a tribe, being accepted was more important than being right. Those who could please, lead, or mobilize others had better chances of surviving than those who stayed alone reflecting on what was true or false. What guaranteed survival in ancestral times wasn't philosophical lucidity, but quick decisions, charismatic speeches, and the ability to mobilize immediate action. When the saber-toothed tiger appeared, nobody wanted to hear an essay about ecosystems. They wanted to follow someone who shouted "run" with conviction. This same brain circuit operates today. Our brain processes simple, emotional, and assertive messages more easily than complex content full of nuances. That's why a coach selling the 5 steps to success attracts millions, while a professor explaining the contradictions of economic systems speaks to empty rooms. Look at the phenomenon of self-help influencers, without psychology training, without research, without depth, but with charisma and absolute certainty. Wake up at 5 a.m., take cold showers, winner's mindset. Magic formulas packaged in 30-second videos. And it works. Not because it's true, but because it's simple, actionable, comforting. Meanwhile, the therapist who studied for a decade understands that each person is unique, that there are no universal formulas, that real change is slow and complex. But try selling complexity in the instant attention marketplace. This was exactly the dynamic Socrates faced in the Agora. While he walked barefoot, proposing free dialogues that almost always ended with more doubts than certainties, the sophists packed squares charging small fortunes to teach ambitious young people to win any debate. The truth? It hardly mattered. What counted was the appearance of reason, sharp rhetoric, the ability to convince, even when wrong. In a few weeks, they promised to transform anyone into a political leader, not through wisdom, but through performance. Socrates didn't promise success, he didn't offer status, only the uncomfortable and lonely path of self-knowledge. Now guess who had lines of paying students? As Bertrand Russell observed, the trouble with the world is that the stupid are cocksure, while the intelligent are full of doubt. But the market doesn't reward doubts. It rewards conviction, even if unfounded. The psychological price of this dynamic is devastating and almost always silent. Studies reveal a consistent correlation. The higher the intelligence, the greater the tendency toward existential anxiety. And this isn't by chance. When you see the layers of complexity that others ignore, when you foresee consequences that nobody wants to discuss, when you recognize patterns that go unnoticed by most, how can you not feel profoundly displaced? It's like watching an accident in slow motion, trying to alert the people around you. But everyone is enchanted by the brightness of the lights and the sound of the spectacle. While you see the collapse approaching, they just applaud. You know this feeling. You're in a conversation about politics, and someone proposes a simplistic solution to a systemic problem. You start explaining the variables involved, the unintended consequences, the historical precedents, and you see glazed eyes, growing impatience. Then someone shouts, "It's simple, just do X," and everyone applauds with relief. The worst part is that you start doubting yourself. If I'm so intelligent, why can't I communicate? Why can't I earn the respect that charlatans achieve so easily? Could the problem be me? Socrates went through this existential crisis. When the Oracle of Delphi declared him the wisest man in Greece, his first reaction was disbelief. He spent years investigating, talking to everyone who had a reputation for wisdom, politicians, poets, craftsmen. His discovery was simultaneously liberating and terribly lonely. He was wiser only because he recognized his own ignorance. All the others lived in the comforting illusion of false knowledge. Imagine carrying that burden, being the only sober person at a party of drunks, seeing the emperor naked while everyone praises his non-existent garments. It's simultaneously a privilege and a curse. The temptation to give up is real and constant, to put on the mask of simplicity, to join the chorus of those who are certain of everything. Some give in, becoming cynics, using their intelligence not to seek truth, but to manipulate better than the manipulators. But there's another path, more difficult and more honest, And it was exactly this path that Socrates chose, creating a legacy that survived millennia while his critics turned to dust. Instead of competing for space in the superficial attention market, he subverted the rules of the game. He didn't seek applause. He formed consciences. He didn't promise ready answers. He taught the art of asking better questions. Plato was one of those rare young people who stayed to listen to him, not despite the difficult questions, but because of them. There was something magnetically authentic about someone who admitted not having all the answers. In a culture of masks and performances, Socrates' intellectual vulnerability was revolutionary. And here's the redemptive paradox. The same depth that repels the masses intensely attracts the few who really matter. Your intelligence may be invisible to many, but it's a beacon for some. Think about the most transformative moments of your intellectual life. I bet they weren't when you impressed someone with a quick answer, but when you encountered someone who asked a question that changed your way of seeing the world, when a conversation continued reverberating days, weeks, years later. They're rare connections, but when they happen, they're worth 1,000 superficial interactions. The Socratic model itself survived and flourished exactly because of this. While the sophists' methods died with them, Socratic questioning is still used in universities, therapies, courts. Why? Because he wasn't selling a product, he was sharing a process. Curiously, the digital age, despite amplifying the superficial, also created niches where depth finds its audience. 3-hour podcasts about philosophy reach millions. Complex educational channels build devoted communities. There's a thirst for depth. It just doesn't shout as loud as superficiality. This channel is an example of that, a small resistance against the tide of superficiality, living proof that it's still possible to cultivate deep ideas in a world of shallow distractions. But it wasn't always possible to resist. In Socrates' time, the price for this audacity was too high, and he was about to pay it in full. The year is 399 BC. Socrates is 70 years old, has spent decades doing what he always did, asking. But Athens has changed. The city lost the Peloponnesian War. Democracy fell and returned. Wounded pride seeks culprits. And who better to blame than the old man who never stopped pointing out everyone's weaknesses? 3 men formally accuse him: Meletus, a mediocre, resentful poet; Anytus, a politician whose son abandoned his career to follow Socrates; Lycon, an orator who never got over being publicly humiliated by the philosopher. The accusations are calculated to inflame, corrupting the youth, denying the city's gods, introducing strange divinities. But the real accusation whispers in the corridors. This man makes us look like idiots. This man reveals our ignorance. This man has to stop. In the court, 501 jurors wait. Socrates could hire a logographer, someone to write an emotional speech full of appeals and tears. It was the standard. It was expected. He refuses. Men of Athens, he begins with the same calm voice as always. My accusers say I am a skilled orator. If by skilled orator they mean someone who speaks the truth, then I agree. But if they mean someone who distorts facts with flowery rhetoric, then I have never been an orator. The court stirs. He's not following the script. There are no pleas, no dramatization. Just the same old Socrates, doing what he always did, seeking truth. They say I corrupt the young. Meletus, come forward. Do you care much about the young? Of course I do. And who improves them? The laws. But who, Meletus? Specific people. The jurors here present, the senators, the citizens in assembly. So everyone in Athens improves the young except me. Exactly. Curious. With horses it's the opposite. Few know how to train them well. Many ruin them. But with humans, according to you, everyone is an expert in education, except me. Nervous laughter in the court. Meletus sweats. The logic is implacable. But Socrates makes a fatal mistake. Instead of appealing for mercy, he provokes. If you condemn me, Athens will lose more than I will. I am like a divine gadfly. sent to awaken a noble but lazy horse. Kill me, and you'll go back to sleep. The apparent arrogance seals his fate. The vote: 280 for guilt, 221 for innocence. By just 30 votes, Socrates is condemned. By Athenian law, he can propose an alternative punishment. Everyone expects him to suggest exile. It's the obvious choice. It's traditional. What punishment do I deserve? He ponders aloud. I've spent my life neglecting personal gains to serve Athens, awakening consciences, questioning certainties. What punishment is given to someone like that? I propose that the city support me in the Prytaneum, as it does with Olympic champions. The court explodes in indignation. Is he mocking? No, he's being terribly sincere. If questioning is a service, it deserves honor, not punishment. The second vote is devastating. 360 for death, 141 against. 80 people who voted innocent now vote death. Radical sincerity has its price. In the final days, friends organize everything. Crito, wealthy and devoted, bribed the guards. The boat to Thessaly waits. Flee, Socrates. Your children need you. Your friends implore you. And then Crito. I live as a fugitive, proving the accusations were true. I teach that we should live with integrity and at the first difficulty, abandon everything. But they're going to kill you. They're going to kill my body. They can't touch what matters. On the last day, he bathes, says goodbye to his family. Friends gather. The jailer brings the hemlock with tears in his eyes. In a month, Socrates had won over even his captors. He drinks without hesitation. He walks to accelerate the poison. When his legs fail, he lies down. The cold rises. Before the end, one last enigma. Crito, we owe a rooster to Asclepius. Asclepius, god of healing. Healed from what? From the illusion that living is more important than living with truth. Athens realizes the mistake too late. The accusers become pariahs. Anytus is stoned in exile. Miletus dies in obscurity. The city that killed Socrates comes to venerate him, but the real lesson echoes deeper. We always kill those who show us who we really are, and we always regret it too late. But you don't need to have the same fate as Socrates, just as you don't need to surrender to fools. Over the centuries, his intellectual heirs learned to navigate this world with cunning, without betraying themselves. The good news is that this path doesn't require genius, just discernment. Here are 4 practical strategies that can change how you position yourself among fools. 1. Master the art of environmental reading. Socrates didn't waste wisdom. He tested his interlocutors with a simple question before diving deep. You can also develop this radar. The signs are clear. When someone responds to your profound observation with "yeah, right," or abruptly changes to small talk about the weather, accept the message. It's not cowardice to retreat, it's strategy. Think like a jazz musician. You don't play Coltrane for those who want pop music. Save your intellectual symphonies for prepared ears. Strategic silence preserves energy for conversations that really matter. 2. Find your peers where they hide. Deep people leave traces. They're not at noisy happy hours or in angry social media comments. In the back row of that lecture, nobody understood, and that they stayed until the end. In the empty bookstore, Friday night, leafing through Kierkegaard with cold coffee beside them. In a small reading group that survived the 3rd book, the one everyone usually abandons. You know how you recognize one of them? By the silence. When you drop a complex idea, they don't interrupt. They stop. They reflect. And they respond with something that deepens, not that simplifies. 3. Practice homeopathic intellectual seduction. Instead of dumping your thesis on the nature of consciousness, tell about that strange moment when your dog seemed to understand your sadness. Instead of quoting Heidegger, ask, have you ever noticed how cell phones changed our notion of solitude? It's the inverted Socratic method. You plant the question disguised as casual conversation. If it germinates, deepen. If not, you saved energy and dignity. Stories beat arguments. Questions beat statements. 4. Build your own garden of Epicurus. After Socrates' death, his disciples understood. Instead of confronting the world, create your world. Plato founded the Academy. Aristotle, the Lyceum. Epicurus, his famous garden. You don't need marble and columns. A WhatsApp group with 3 thinking people can be your academy. A blog read by 12 curious minds is worth more than 1,000 empty followers. A channel with few subscribers but good comments. A monthly book club is your modern garden. The question isn't to change the world, it's to create a micro-world where depth is common currency. Perhaps the deepest lesson isn't about how to gain attention, but about what kind of attention is worth seeking. The sophists were celebrities in life. Who remembers their names today? Socrates died condemned, and 2,400 years later we still discuss his ideas. There's a melancholic beauty in accepting your place on the margins. Like stars that only appear far from artificial lights, some truths only shine in contemplative penumbra. Your intelligence may not illuminate stages, but it clears paths for those seeking genuine light. The world will continue preferring circus to seminar. It will continue rewarding those who shout loudest, not those who think deepest. And that's okay, because you weren't born to entertain, you were born to understand. You're not here to sell certainties. You're here to keep alive the questions that matter. As Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses waiting to see us beautiful and brave. Your misunderstood depth, your rejected complexity, perhaps they're exactly the gifts the world needs most, even without knowing it. And if this message resonates, if you recognize this pain, if you carry this luminous burden of seeing beyond the obvious, know that you're part of an ancient and necessary lineage. From Socrates to you, the torch of uncomfortable consciousness passes, of the inconvenient question, of the refusal to accept the easy when the true is within reach. Don't change. Don't simplify. Don't betray the complexity that inhabits you for empty applause. The world has enough entertainers. It desperately needs its Socrates. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their depth isn't a defect, that there's dignity in being misunderstood while being true, but there's no honor in being applauded while being false. As Socrates taught us with his life and death, hemlock lasts minutes, betraying yourself lasts forever. The choice is yours. It always has been.